It all started on a cold evening in the rugged mountains of Utah, 1850. Snow blanketed the ground, muffling the sound of Clara's horse as it galloped through the dense forest. Her breath came in ragged gasps, every exhale a puff of mist in the frigid air. The wind was sharp as a Bowie knife, cutting through the thin coat she wore. But she didn't dare slow down. Behind her, Cedar City smoldered, black smoke curling into the gray winter sky, a grim reminder of the massacre she'd narrowly escaped. Bart Partain's gang had come like a thunderstorm on a clear day, fast, loud, and without a lick of mercy. They tore through town, killing and looting, leaving behind ash and silence. Clara's parents had fallen in the chaos, and now all she had was fear and a few paltry supplies stuffed in her father's worn satchel. With nothing but desperation driving her, she pushed deeper into the wild. The forest was quiet in a way that made the hair on her neck stand up. No birdsong, no rustle, just the creak of frozen branches bearing the weight of snow. As night dropped its black shawl over the land, the temperature fell even faster. Clara finally slowed her steed, exhaustion weighing heavy on her shoulders. She'd lost the gang, maybe, but she knew better than to count on that luck holding. She was deep in territory she didn't know, frightened, alone, and with the bitter cold gnawing at her bones. She dismounted, legs trembling from the cold and the ride. Her boots sank into the snow as she tied her horse to a nearby tree. Around her, the world glittered under pale moonlight, quiet and too open. Her every step left a trail a blind man could follow. She found a small clearing and sat against a large rock, clutching the satchel like it might keep her alive. Inside were a few things: flint, some jerky, a small knife. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. No time for mourning. No time for fear. Only moving forward. Now, she didn't know it then, but just a few miles off, someone else was fighting for their life too. Tahu, a Navajo chief, sat hunched near a makeshift lodge. His body burned with fever. His breath came shallow. Smallpox had found him, and like a wildfire, it showed no mercy. He'd left his people, knowing staying meant spreading death. Yet even in his weakened state, he felt unease twisting in his gut. His brother Kiona had taken charge back in the village, and Tahu feared that ambition was steering Kiona into dangerous waters. A sound snapped him from thought, a rustle in the forest. Too weak to stand, he reached for his knife, vision swimming. Then from the trees came a pale-skinned woman, eyes wide as a deer's. She froze. So did he. Clara stared, heart pounding. An Indian. Her gut told her to run, but something in his eyes, feverish, yes, but not cruel, gave her pause. He looked broken, not dangerous. And in his isolation, she saw herself. Fear warred with empathy inside her. He wasn't going to last much longer. And maybe, just maybe, she was the only one who could save him. She stepped forward, slow as a sunrise. Clara crouched low, her hands raised slow like she was approaching a spooked colt. The man didn't move, though his grip on that knife stayed firm. His face was slick with sweat, eyes glossed with fever, but there was no mistaking the pain etched into every line. "I ain't here to harm you," she said soft, her voice barely carrying over the cold hush of the woods. He didn't answer, just watched her, breathing ragged. Clara could feel the weight of that stare, like he was trying to measure her soul with just a glance. She knelt beside him, pulling the satchel around. "You got a fire going?" she asked, eyeing the small pile of embers that looked more like memory than heat. He nodded, slow and stiff, and that was all the invitation she needed. With practiced hands, Clara fed twigs and barked to the coals, coaxing a flame from what little warmth remained. The fire sputtered, then caught, a flicker and heart in the dark. She pulled her coat tighter and looked back at the man. "Name's Clara," she offered, still watching him careful. "You got one." A long pause, then a whisper. "Tahu." His voice was cracked, like old leather. Still, it grounded him, gave him shape. Clara pulled a tin cup from her bag and melted snow in it, adding a sprig of barker Ma used to brew for fevers. As it heated, she reached out and pressed the back of her hand to his forehead. "Hot. Too hot. You're burning up, Tahu," she muttered. "If that sickness don't break, It'll take you before the night's out." He didn't answer, just closed his eyes. Clara worked without saying more, wetting a cloth, cooling his skin, whispering nothings to herself. Her hands were stiff, her limbs atching with cold and exhaustion, but she kept moving. Couldn't stop, not when someone else needed her. And somewhere in that long, silent night, a strange peace settled over her. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding. She was fighting, not for her own life, but for someone else's. As dawn teased the edge of the world, Tahu stirred. His eyes opened, clearer than before. He looked at her, really looked, and spoke again, voice stronger this time. "You helped me, why?" Clara sat back on her heels, shrugging. "Because I couldn't walk away. Not from someone who's dying alone." Tahu stared at the flames, then nodded, once. "Then I owe you." "You don't owe me nothing," she replied, her voice soft. But she was wrong, because the very next day, as the sun rose over the snow-laced trees, a sound echoed through the forest, low at first, then louder. The steady beat of hooves. Many hooves. Tahu sat up, struggling to his feet, eyes going wide. "My people," he whispered. And sure enough, from between the trees, riders emerged, dozens of them, silent and watchful. Warriors cloaked in leather and snow, their faces solemn. They had come not with weapons drawn, but with something far heavier. Purpose. Clara stood frozen, the warmth draining from her limbs. She'd saved one man. Now his whole tribe had come for her. The forest held its breath as the riders came, their ponies stepping soft through the snow, barely making a sound. At their head rode a tall woman with braids streaked silver and a gaze sharp enough to skin a man's pride. She wore a deerskin cloak and turquoise at her throat, and when her eyes landed on Tahu, her posture shifted, a mix of relief and stern reckoning. "Kiona sent us," she said in the Navajo tongue, her voice firm. "He thought you were dead." "I nearly was," Tahu rasped, still weak but standing. "She saved me." He turned slightly, gesturing to Clara. The woman's gaze followed, landing on her like a weight. Clara didn't flinch, though her heart was pounding like a war drum. For a long moment, no one spoke. The warriors watched her, some curious, others cautious. One of them, a young man with fire in his eyes, muttered something in their tongue that Clara couldn't catch, but the tone made her stomach tighten. Then the silver-haired woman dismounted. "You're Clara?" she asked in careful English. Clara nodded. "Yes, ma'am. My name is Nolly. I'm Tahu's aunt. He is chief, but he gave up that role when he left. Now things have changed." Clara swallowed, glancing at Tahu. He looked away, ashamed maybe, or afraid of what would come next. Nolly stepped closer. "We thank you for what you've done, but you must come with us." Clara stiffened. "Why?" "There are voices in the village who think Tahu should not return," she said. "Voices who say a chief who brings sickness and strangers brings only danger." "You think I'm dangerous?" Clara asked, anger flaring. "I think you are unknown," Nolly answered gently. "And right now, unknown things frighten people." Tahu coughed, leaning heavy on a walking stick. "I won't go back without her." Nolly looked at him, then back at Clara. "Then we ride together." Clara didn't know what awaited her in that village, but she felt something stir in her bones, something that told her this was bigger than just surviving. This was a test of trust, of strength, of whether a girl with nothing left could still matter in a world that had tried to break her. She nodded once, firm. "All right, I'll go." They rode out by midday, Tahu in a stretcher slung between two horses, Clara keeping pace beside Nolly. The tribe said little, but Clara felt their eyes. Not cruel, not yet, just heavy with questions. As the sun dipped behind the peaks, and the forest gave way to open plains, Clara saw smoke rising in the distance. Not the angry black kind that stole her family, but soft gray ribbons curling from lodges and hearths. The village, her new beginning, or her end, waited just beyond that smoke. They reached the village by twilight. The sky was a band of gold and bruise above the plains, and the snow crackled under hoof like old bones. Clara's breath fogged the air as she rode in, flanked by riders who hadn't yet decided if she was friend or threat. Tahu, wrapped in hides and half-conscious from the ride, was carried to the healer's lodge. Nali dismounted with a grace that belied her years, then turned to Clara. "You'll stay with me," she said. No room for argument. Clara nodded. Her nerves were a thrum beneath her skin, but her spine stayed straight. The lodge Nali led her to was warm, thick with the scent of pine smoke and sage. Inside, woven mats lined the floor, and dried herbs hung in quiet bunches overhead. It was simple but alive, not like her family's cabin back in Cedar, which now was just cinders and ghosts. "You can rest here," Nali said, handing Clara a thick blanket. "Eat, then tomorrow you'll speak." "Speak?" Clara asked, her voice rough from the cold. "The people must hear from you," Nali replied. "Not just Tahu. They need to see who you are." Clara looked down at her hands. Worn, chapped, shaking slightly. She didn't know what she could say that would change any minds, but she nodded just the same. That night she didn't sleep much. Outside, the wind howled like an old dog, and somewhere near the edge of the village, drums beat low and slow, steady as a heartbeat. Inside, Nali sat silent by the fire, eyes closed but not asleep. She was listening. To the fire, the wind, maybe to things Clara couldn't hear. When morning came, the village gathered in a wide circle near the center. Clara stood with Nali at her side, wrapped in borrowed furs that didn't quite fit. The people stared, not unkindly, but like they were trying to see through her skin to the truth beneath. Then Kiona stepped forward. Tahu's brother. He was tall, broad in the shoulders, his face stern and carved with suspicion. His eyes flicked to Clara, then to the crowd. "This woman," he began in their tongue, "is not one of us. Yet she stands here." Nali translated soft for Clara, but she understood the tone well enough. "She walks with a sickness-bringer," Kiona continued, "and she comes to our hearths without invitation. We do not know her heart, and Tahu is weak. He has been gone too long." A murmur swept through the crowd, like wind through dry grass. Then Clara stepped forward. "I didn't ask for any of this," she said, her voice loud, clear. "I didn't come here to take. I came because I helped a man I could have left to die. That's all. That's what I know how to do. Fight to keep someone alive." Nali translated, slow and sure. Clara looked at the people, not with fear, but with fire. "You think I'm not one of you? You're right, but I've lost everything. I've had fire take my home, and men take my family. If you ask me to leave, I will. But I won't apologize for choosing mercy when it mattered." There was silence. Then low, almost like a cough, came a single voice. An elder near the back. "A woman who saves a chief may not be one of us," he said. "But she may be something worth knowing." That turned the tide. Not all at once, but the mood shifted like a wind changing course. The whisper softened. The stares thawed. Kiona scowled, but said no more. Not then. That night, a fire was lit in the village circle. Not for celebration, but for watching. For waiting. Because a new chapter had begun, and no one knew where it'd lead. The fire crackled in the village circle, throwing long shadows that danced like old ghosts against the lodge walls. Clara sat beside Nali, trying to keep her hands from fidgeting, her breath misting in the cold. Around her, the tribe watched with cautious eyes, some curious, others guarded. Tahu hadn't spoken much since their arrival, still too weak, but his fever had broken, and that alone seemed a miracle. But not everyone saw it that way. Kiona moved like a man with a storm behind his ribs. He paced the snow-packed ground, his jaw tight, his words clipped when he spoke to the others. Clara could feel his anger, quiet but sharp, like a blade sliding back into its sheath. Later that evening, Nali spoke to Tahu in private, their voices muffled behind a curtain of hides. Clara didn't mean to listen, but she caught enough. "You must speak," Nali said. "The people won't wait forever." "I am not ready," Tahu whispered. "Then they'll choose for you." That night, Clara stepped outside alone. The sky above stretched wide and black, stars pricked across it like silver threads in a worn quilt. She walked down to the stream that bordered the village, the water slow and glassy, with ice along its edge. There she found him, Kiona, kneeling by the bank, staring into the water like it held answers he couldn't read. He looked up when he heard her steps. Didn't speak. "Do you hate me?" Clara asked. Kiona didn't turn. "I don't know you." "Seems to me," she said carefully. "You've made up your mind anyway." He stood slow, tall and broad as a mountain at dusk. "You brought change. That alone is enough to make me wary." Clara crossed her arms, meeting his gaze. "Change don't wait for permission. It comes when it has to." He didn't respond, just walked past her, footsteps crunching like dry bones in the snow. Back at the lodge, Tahu was waiting. He looked better, still pale, but his eyes were clearer now, sharp with thought. "I heard what you said," he murmured as she entered. Clara sat beside him. "About what?" "About mercy. About not apologizing it." He turned toward her. "You've got more fight in you than most warriors I know." Clara smiled faintly. "It's all that's left." Tahu's face darkened. "Kiona will move soon. He's gathering support. He wants the role I left behind, and he'll challenge me for it, in the old way." Clara's stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" "Trial. Not with blades. With words. With proof. He'll demand I show strength, show wisdom, show that I belong. And if you don't, I lose everything. My place, my name, and maybe my life." The fire popped between them, its glow flickering against their skin. "Then you better win," Clara said. Tahu's eyes met hers. "Not alone." That night, Clara sat long after the others slept, watching the flames dance and wondering just what she'd stepped into. She'd come looking to escape death. Now she was fighting to protect life, another's, and maybe her own. And somewhere deep in her chest, a fire began to burn. 2 days passed like slow thunder. Tahu grew stronger with each sunrise. He walked the village with Clara at his side, speaking to the elders, listening to the youth. Not with pride, but with quiet conviction. He didn't speak of his sickness. He spoke of balance, of survival, of the land's changing hunger. And every time he did, Clara saw eyes soften, if only a little. Still, the storm Kiona was stirring couldn't be ignored. He gathered his own crowd, men and women who'd known only his voice for months, who feared that what Tahu brought back was weakness in a time that called for iron. Nali watched both camps with the stillness of a stone crow perched on a ridge, saying little, but missing nothing. Then came the call. Kiona demanded counsel. Clara stood beside Tahu in the long lodge, where fire burned low in the center and shadows clung to the rafters. The air was thick with smoke and anticipation. Kiona entered like a storm wrapped in flesh, his shoulders squared, his chin high. "I speak not with disrespect," he began, "but truth." Tahu walked away when our people needed him most. He returned with strangers, with sickness, with uncertainty. Clara tensed, but Tahu held up a hand, calm, steady. "I left," Tahu said, "because I would have brought death if I stayed. I gave up the title, but not the care. I survived, and I bring back a lesson." Kiona's jaw twitched. "And this woman? What lesson is she?" Clara stepped forward, heart pounding like hooves on hardpan. "I didn't come here for a title or to be welcomed. I came because I saw someone dying, and I chose not to run. That's all. But if you're a skin what I am now," she glanced at Tahu, "I'm standing with him." The room was quiet save for the crackling of fire. Then an elder spoke. "Words are easy. What proof do you offer, Tahu?" Tahu stepped forward, drawing from his satchel a bundle wrapped in hide. He unrolled it, drawings, maps of old trails, plans for irrigation, notes on weather patterns, things he'd written during his exile, signs that he'd been thinking, not just of living, but of Liadin. "I have been gone," he said, "but I have not been idle." Even Kiona couldn't deny the work. Silence fell again, heavy and thick. Then the oldest among them stood, a woman with hair white as smoke and a voice like dry river stone. "Let us vote," she said. No one argued. When it was done, Tahu stood taller. The vote had gone his way, but not by much. Kiona didn't protest, didn't rage, just nodded, slow and sharp. "Then I will follow," he said. but the look in his eyes said the fire in him hadn't died. It had just gone quiet. That night, Tahu sat beside Clara outside the lodge, staring into the star-scattered sky. "You saved me," he said. "Twice now." Clara shook her head. "You saved yourself. I just gave you the chance." A long silence stretched between them, warm and easy. Then he said, "What will you do now?" Clara looked out across the village. "Don't know yet, but maybe I ain't done here." Days passed quiet, but not idle. The village began to breathe easier under Tahu's return. He met with elders, inspected the winter stores, and walked the borders with warriors who no longer looked at Clara like a rattler in tall grass. Children trailed behind her now, giggling at her clumsy attempts at their language, and even a few mothers began leaving scraps of fry bread at her door. But not all hearts softened so easy. Kiona kept to himself, watching from the edges, speaking only when spoken to. And Clara noticed, so did Tahu. Kiona hadn't challenged the council's decision, but his silence carried the weight of a man not done with fighting. One morning, just as the frost was starting to melt from the tips of the lodge poles, Nolly entered Clara's quarters with her jaw tight. "A hunting party was ambushed," she said. "South Ridge. 1 man dead, 2 injured." Clara's chest went tight. "Partain's men." Tahu stepped in from behind Nolly, already dressed for travel. "That's what I aim to find out." "You can't go alone," Clara said. "I won't," he replied, strapped in on his bow. "You're coming with me." Clara blinked. "Me? You tracked your way through snow-blind country alone. You've got more sense than most, and I trust you." They rode out that afternoon, Tahu, Clara, Nolly, and 2 scouts. The wind bit cold, and the trail south was scarred by broken brush and red-spotted snow. Clara's stomach churned at the sight. Hoof prints, drag marks, blood. But what made her blood run cold was what they found hanging from a low pine limb. A strip of cloth, frayed and black, tattered like it had been yanked from a coat in a scuffle. Clara dismounted, her hands trembling. She knew that cloth. Knew it from Cedar City. Bart Partain's gang. She turned to Tahu. "They're here." He nodded, grim. "Then we don't wait for them to come again." As they rode back, faster now, Clara's mind reeled. The gang that tore her life apart was here, in these woods, stalking the people that had taken her in. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was justice. No, this was retribution. When they returned, Tahu gathered the warriors. No call for blood, just preparation. Patrols doubled. Lookouts posted. The village shifted from peace to ready, but not one soul flinched. They'd lived through storms before. That night, Clara stood by the fire, staring into the embers. Tahu stepped beside her. "You all right?" She didn't answer for a moment. Then, "When they came for my family, I ran. I've lived with that ever since." Tahu didn't speak, just waited. "I ain't running this time." He nodded. "Then neither am I." And there they stood, 2 folks from different worlds, both forged by fire, waiting for the storm to come. Snow fell light and steady the next morning, laying a fresh skin over the village trails. It made things quieter, too quiet. Every footstep sounded like a warning. Every shadow looked like it could bite. Tahu called a council before sunrise. The fire burned low in the center lodge, but the heat in that room came from the folks seated round it. Warriors, elders, mothers, and scouts. "They're close," Tahu said. "Partain's riders. Maybe 10. Maybe more." Clara stood behind him, her shoulders squared. She hadn't spoken yet. Didn't need to. The scars on her face and the set of her jaw did the talking. "We don't know what they want," Kiona said flatly, arms crossed. "We don't know if they even know we're here." "They knew about the hunting party," Clara said, her voice clear. "That wasn't a chance encounter. That was a message." Kiona's eyes flicked to her, measured, but not cruel. "Not anymore. They'll come for more," Tahu added. "We can wait, or we can meet him on our own ground." The council murmured, some fearful, some angry, all wary. Nolly finally spoke. "We defend the village. That's our ground. They want to fight. They'll have to walk into our fire to get it." So it was decided. By sundown, the village moved like a single body. Women boiled water. Men sharpened blades. Children were ushered to the inner lodges, where stone walls held strong. Clara found herself by the fire pit, restringing bows alongside warriors who now nodded to her, like she was one of their own. Tahu handed her a knife, not long, but balanced, worn smooth at the handle. "You remember how to use one?" Clara nodded. "I remember what it's for." That night, she couldn't sleep. Dreams of ash and blood danced behind her eyelids. Her family's faces, the smoke over Cedar City, and a shadow that moved with a limp and a laugh full of gunpowder. Bart Partain himself. Dawn came gray and still. Then hoofbeats. Not a rush. Not a charge. Just steady steps, echoing through the snow-damp woods. Clara stepped out beside Tahu, and there they were, Partain's gang. 11 in all. Dust-colored coats. Cold eyes. Guns slung low and loose. And at the center, Partain. Older now. Grayer. But Clara knew that crooked grin. "Well," he drawled, his voice slow and mean. "Ain't this a picture? Didn't think I'd find you again, little miss. But I do like surprises." Tahu stepped forward. "You're not welcome here." Partain looked him over. "Didn't ask for a welcome. We're just passing through." Clara drew the knife slow. "You didn't pass through Cedar. You burned it." Partain's grin widened. "Oh, that. You still sore about that town? Thought you'd be long dead by now." "I'm not," Clara said. "And you're not passing through anything. Not without blood." There was a moment, just one, where the forest seemed to hold its breath. Then Tahu raised his hand, and everything erupted. The first gunshot cracked the sky like lightning off a dry ridge. Clara dropped low, just as Tahu let an arrow fly, sharp and fast. It struck the lead rider's horse, sending it rearing with a scream. Chaos broke like a fever. Partain's men split, firing wild, but they hadn't counted on the village being ready. From behind brush-covered trenches and the edges of stone lodges, arrows sang and bullets barked. The village had teeth now, and it bit back hard. Clara ducked behind a log wall, breathing heavy, her fingers tight on the knife. The air was thick with smoke and snow churned up by hoof and heel. She saw one of the outlaws break left. Try to flank, she ran. Her boots hit the frozen earth, fast and silent. She didn't think, she acted. When the outlaw turned, she was already on him, her blade flashing. It wasn't clean. It wasn't fast. But it was done. She fell back, chest heaving, blood on her hands and snow in her lungs. Across the village circle, Tahu and Kiona fought side by side, silent, grim, and deadly. The past had tried to wedge them apart, but now they were iron and flint, sparking together in the thick of battle. Then Clara saw him, Partain. He rode through the smoke like a devil on horseback, firing left and right. Logan, like he'd already won. His coat flared behind him, and his eyes locked on Clara. "Well, ain't you a stubborn little ghost?" he growled, leveling his pistol. She dove, rolling through the mud and snow, the shot missing her ear by inches. She came up behind a broken trough, heart thundering. "Come on, girl," he taunted. "You want blood, don't you? Come get it." She rose, slow, the knife in one hand. But before she could move, another figure stepped between them. "Tahu, you'll not touch her," he said, voice low. Partain's grin turned sharp. "You her knight now. You should have stayed dead." They circled like wolves, then lunged. The fight was brutal. Tahu's blade against Partain's revolver, fists crashing, boots slamming into frozen earth. Clara watched for a beat, then charged. She wouldn't let him face this alone. Partain shoved Tahu back and turned, raising his pistol again. But Clara was already there. She drove the knife deep, right below his ribs. His eyes went wide, the gun dropping from his hand. "You," he rasped. "I remember Cedar," she said, her voice a tremble. "I remember everything." Partain collapsed, blood steaming on the snow. The air hung heavy for a long breath. Then it was over. What was left of the gang had fled or fallen. Smoke drifted skyward, and silence returned, slow and sacred. Clara sank to her knees, not in grief, not in fear, but because it was done. The past had caught her, and she'd stared it down. The dawn that followed was the quiet kind. The kind that don't sing, don't shine, just creeps in soft, like it's afraid to wake the dead. Clara stood near the edge of the village, watching the sun break over the hills. Her coat was torn, her hands still stained, but her heart, for the first time in a long while, was steady. The smoke from the battle still lingered, curling lazy over the rooftops, but there were no more cries, no more guns, just the sounds of a village patching itself back together. Hammering murmurs, the scrape of a broom across stone. Tahu joined her, his steps slower now, but sure. The cut on his cheek was fresh, the blood dark against his skin. "We buried 5, he said. Clara nodded. "We lost good folks. But we're still here." She looked at him. "And Partain?" "Gone. The dead don't ride." They stood quiet a spell, the wind playing through the tall grass. "You could leave," Tahu said finally. "The trail's open now. No debts left. No ghosts following." Clara looked toward the snow-blind mountains, the long road twisting west. Then back at the village. Children ran past Logan, chasing each other between lodges. Nolly stirred a pot near the central fire, her voice soft as she sang a lullaby in the old tongue. Clara turned to him. "Eyes sure. I ain't got much out there waiting for me. But here," she glanced around, then met his gaze. "Here, I'm not running. I'm building. If you'll have me." Tahu smiled then, small, tired, but real. "You've already put down roots," he said. "You just didn't notice." So she stayed. Through spring thaw and summer's bloom, Clara worked alongside the tribe. She learned their ways, their language, their stories. And they learned hers. She taught the children to read, using scraps of paper and charcoal on smooth hides. She helped tend the fields, mend roofs, and listened to the old ones as they whispered lessons by firelight. And each night, when the stars hung heavy above, she sat beside Tahu outside the lodge, 2 souls bound by blood, fire, and choice. She had come from ash. But here, in the heart of a people she once feared and now called family, Clara began to bloom.